The death of a high school teacher initially appears to be an accident, but a tape recorded by the victim just 3 days before his death raises questions. Greensboro in North Carolina, the city is not only known for its historic center, Duke University, and its world-famous clinic, but also for an extremely unusual death. Rodney Schneider is a popular basketball coach and driving instructor at Greensboro High School. After graduating from university, Rodney marries his high school sweetheart, Jill Lindsay. Rodney is a kind, compassionate, and caring person who is firmly grounded in life and has a big heart. But his personal life is not as smooth as his professional life. After 4 years of marriage, Rodney and Jill divorce. 2 years later, Rodney marries the 31-year-old widow Barbara Foster and adopts her 2 sons, Bobby and Jacob. Barbara works as a secretary at Duke University Hospital, while Rodney continues to work as a teacher and coach. On weekends, he serves as a National Guard reservist and teaches Sunday school with Barbara at their church. On the outside, Rodney and Barbara Schneider have a perfect marriage. But that all changes in the early hours of a February morning. Shortly before the end of the night shift, the police receive an emergency call from the Schneiders' house. They find Rodney in his bed, shot in the back of the head. 3 hours later, he dies in hospital. Barbara Schneider is lying in bed next to her husband when the fatal shot is fired. Barbara explains that Rodney had been sleeping with a 25mm pistol under his pillow lately because of problems with prowlers in the area. She emphasizes that she was against this decision. Barbara goes on to say that she was woken up just before dawn by one of her sons going into the bathroom. Fearing that Rodney might think her son is a burglar, she tries to get the gun out from under his pillow. She accidentally fires a shot that hits Rodney in the back of the head. The death is classified as an accident. But strangely enough, history repeats itself. Because Barbara's first husband also died in a shooting accident. He was cleaning his 25mm pistol when a shot accidentally went off and hit him in the chest. Barbara Schneider is widowed for the second time, again in a shooting accident. The fact that the pistol was kept under the pillow, that the wife took it out from under the pillow and accidentally fired a shot, and that the shot fatally hit her husband in the head. We have to look at all these factors very carefully because they are very unusual. This is no ordinary sequence of events. A few hours after the death of Rodney Schneider, Inspector Richard Buchanan visits the crime scene to ask some routine questions. Upon his arrival, he sees Barbara's father removing the bloody bedsheets, pillow, and bedspread. Since the death is ruled accidental, these items are not considered evidence. Buchanan then speaks to Barbara Schneider, who seems somewhat reserved and not particularly friendly. She shows him the bedroom, which has now been cleaned. The bed linen has been removed and the bed is made up as it would be on a normal day. Barbara repeats her account of the incident and explains that the gun went off accidentally when she pulled it out from under the pillow. She tells Buchanan that she and Rodney were happily married for 9 years. Something didn't seem right, but I couldn't say exactly what it was. There was no evidence that it was anything other than a shooting accident. The news of Rodney Schneider's death particularly disturbed his first wife, Jill Lindsay. Her mother told her that Rodney had been accidentally shot by his wife, but Jill was convinced it was no accident. Her father said she could guess, but not know, but Jill was sure. Jill Lindsay wrote a letter to the police because Rodney had confided many things to her. He had told her that Barbara had withdrawn large sums of money from their joint bank account, and he suspected that she was having affairs with other men. Once he had even seen her with another man. The investigators began to look more closely into Barbara's past and had serious doubts about her account. Her first husband had also been killed in bed with a 25mm pistol. Both husbands died in similar circumstances, and Barbara was present in both cases. Both deaths were ruled accidental, prompting investigators to take a closer look at the case. The investigators re-examine the files on the death of Barbara's first husband, but find nothing that speaks against an accident. Despite the efforts of Lenny Foster's family to have the case investigated as a possible murder, the court's decision remains unchanged. Barbara inherits all of Lenny Foster's assets, but doubts remain. Now the officers are faced with another mysterious death and many unanswered questions. I was desperate for the truth and wanted a thorough investigation. But if, as I suspected, it wasn't an accident, then I wanted to bring that to light. 90% of our work is based on common sense, the rest on the law. So could it be that Barbara Schneider is not the grieving widow, but a serial killer? The investigation becomes a scientific case. Although Lenny Foster's death was officially classified as an accident and the case dates back 10 years, it remains a mystery. The case should have been forgotten long ago, but Rodney Schneider, Barbara's second husband, thought about it shortly before his own death. He told his ex-wife, Jill Lindsay, that he feared for his life because he knew that Barbara's first husband had died under mysterious circumstances. Rodney suspected that he was paranoid because he often spoke of delusions. Barbara Schneider states that the shot went off when she pulled the gun from under the pillow and that she accidentally touched the trigger. The probability of her account can be verified by gunshot examinations. With common criminal weapons, an accidental discharge is rather unrealistic, as a pre-cocked revolver still has a trigger resistance of around 1,200 grams. Such incidents are more likely with sporting pistols or hunting weapons, as their triggers are often set very lightly. If the trigger resistance is less than 1,000 grams, an unintentional shot may be fired. The force required to fire a weapon can be precisely measured at the State Criminal Police Office of Lower Saxony. Killian Zenner clamps any weapon into an apparatus that automatically pulls the trigger. The data is transferred to a computer and shows that the force required is usually well over 1 kilogram. In the Schneider case, the pistol even had a trigger resistance of over 2 kilograms. During the autopsy, the forensic experts discovered another inconsistency in Barbara's statement. The fatal bullet did not hit Rodney Schneider when she pulled the pistol out from under the pillow, but was fired from the top down. Dr. Christian Schumer from the Institute of Forensic Medicine in Hamburg has extensive experience with gunshot wounds to the head, as he performs hundreds of autopsies every year. The most precise way to determine the angle of impact is to reconstruct the bullet channel in the body. Probes are inserted into the gunshot channel and photographed in all spatial directions in order to later simulate the sequence of events and understand how the shots impacted and penetrated the body of the victim. Another piece of evidence also remains strange. The cartridge case was found near Rodney Schneider's head. Weapons expert Emil Bishop noted that the shell casings were ejected to the right. If Barbara's version of events was correct, the shell casing should have been found in the middle of the bed. His investigation results do not match Barbara's story. The pictures of the crime scene and the position of the bullet casing clearly show that Barbara Schneider could not have fired from the position she described. When a shot is fired, dust oil and gunpowder are ejected from the barrel and dispersed. These traces are detectable up to a distance of 1 to 1.2 meters. If the shot was fired directly at the victim's head, there should have been traces of gunpowder there, as well as on the bed linen. Barbara's father had the sheets washed immediately after the accident, but even then, powder residue can still be detected. Strangely, however, there are no traces of gunpowder on this sheet. After all these contradictions, Richard Buchanan asks Barbara Schneider to show him exactly what happened that morning. The reenactment is recorded on video. Barbara Schneider reenacts her version of the story. An official plays the role of the dead man, and immediately Barbara herself notices inconsistencies. So she tries to present the body in such a way that the situation fits her story. There was no doubt that she intentionally shot and killed Rodney Schneider. Police doubt that a trained U.S. National Guard soldier would keep a loaded and unsecured handgun under his pillow. More and more evidence casts doubt on the fact that Rodney Schneider's death was an accident. Eventually, the police discover that Barbara was spending large sums of money and the couple was heavily in debt. Barbara eventually had to take out a loan that she could not repay and applied for another loan from a second bank to pay off the first loan. She took the documents for this second loan home with her so that her husband could also sign them. The public prosecutor's office consults another expert, the document examiner Daniel Mortini. He compares various signatures of Rodney Schneider, including the one on the second bank loan and the one in his will, which was revised shortly before his death. Mortini determines that the signatures on the will and other documents were forged. If Rodney Schneider hadn't signed these documents, who had? Some of these forged checks were used to transfer money to Barbara Schneider's personal account. All these financial clues showed us that Barbara was heavily in debt, and Rodney knew nothing about it. The beneficiary of the also forged life insurance policy in the amount of $170,000 was none other than his wife, Barbara Schneider. The final piece of evidence in the case comes from a very surprising source: the dead man himself. When one of Rodney Schneider's students is cleaning out his locker in the gym at Greensboro High School, he finds a cassette tape. He recognizes the voice on it immediately. The tape was recorded exactly 3 days before Rodney Schneider's death. On it, he expresses his fear that his wife Barbara is planning to murder him. He also doesn't believe in the alleged accidental death of her first husband. What I heard on this tape sounded so real. I've never heard anything like it in a criminal case before, because normally the victim doesn't have their own voice in the courtroom. This case is different. The victim has a voice. He tells us everything himself, so to speak. His feelings, his experiences and worries, and all this shortly before his execution. The public prosecutor's office has what it needs: a motive and sufficient evidence. Barbara Schneider is arrested for murder. The public prosecutor suspects that Barbara planned her husband's murder well in advance. Rodney Schneider's notes show that she apparently wanted to poison him first. She passes the pills off as aspirin, but Rodney refuses to take the pills, so she reaches for the gun. Shortly before dawn, Barbara Schneider takes the 25mm pistol from the drawer of a chest of drawers, goes to her sleeping husband, and shoots him in the back of the head. The bullet enters his head from above. She holds the gun far enough away so that no gunpowder stains can remain on the bedding. To prepare the crime scene, Barbara places the bullet casing right next to her husband's head. This is a mistake, because if the gun went off unintentionally when Barbara pulled it out from under the pillow, then the bullet casing should have been thrown to the right, towards the foot of the bed. The angle of the shot, the position of the bullet casing, the lack of gunpowder stains, the forged will, the tampered life insurance policy, and above all, Rodney Schneider's dark prophecy of his own murder on tape provided the jury with a clear case. Barbara Schneider was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. However, following an appeal, her sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Without forensic examinations, the judicial system would only have had theories and speculation. This is not enough for criminal prosecution. Only forensic medicine can provide the necessary evidence. The public prosecutor's office suspects that Barbara Schneider is also responsible for the death of her first husband. As she will remain in prison for the rest of her life anyway, further criminal prosecution is no longer considered necessary.